Hello, and welcome to Legacy Curious, a podcast of life stories and legacy planning. I'm your host, David Gravelle. This is the first in a series of episodes featuring Scott MacDonald from MacDonald Financial Solutions. Today, I'll be asking Scott to share his vision of planning and protecting legacy. In future episodes, we'll take a deeper dive into the new generation of life insurance policies, debt-free life, and infinite banking strategy. Let's begin by welcoming Scott and getting started. Scott, thanks for taking some time to talk to me today. I have I've got an audience that I'm speaking to about their legacies, how they're building it, planning, protecting, and sharing their legacies. How does McDonald Financial Solutions envision helping people build and protect their legacy?
Yeah, David, that's a great question. First of all, I want to say I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate what you're doing here with this podcast because I think, especially the folks that I meet with daily, there is a big void out there in the US right now. There's a huge void with understanding what a legacy is, what our money is for. And I really love how you are addressing this. So thank you for having me on. Um, I'll answer it probably in an answer very long, but the reality is there are several different things that I see with our agency and the folks that I talk to every day. There are several things that I call wealth killers or enemies of wealth. And those things, really, the three main things, in my opinion, that I see most often, David, are taxes, risk associated with building wealth, and liquidity. And those three things, if not handled correctly, are going to really stifle a person's ability to build wealth and to build a legacy, because we're talking about a legacy. My definition of that would be wealth, certainly, but more than that, it is how is it set up to make sure that it lasts for generations and generations and generations. And that is, to me, the true definition of legacy. So those are really the three things, David, that I feel impact uh, people's ability to make wealth.
I talk to clients every day, and typically they have three major concerns they're asking me about, Scott, is what happens if they die too soon? What happens if they get sick along the way? And finally, what happens if they outlive their money? And how would McDonald Financial Solutions address, those three major concerns that I'm dealing with every day with my client?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this, first of all, that what I find is that most people don't even really understand that proper planning addresses those things. A lot of people don't know what they don't know. For example, we've heard that you need to invest in a 401k or something like that and put your money in the market. And I talk to so many people, David, that will, when asked them, what are you investing in your 401k? I don't really know. Okay. When we dig into that a little bit, and it turns out that it might only be $100, $150 a month. And there is very little to no education on the front end, especially when we've got, Gen Z now coming up and getting jobs, and millennials that are a little bit older and have had jobs for a little bit now. Most of them are so unclear about what do I do to invest? What is the 401k for? Those kind of things. And unfortunately, what we start to see, and this has gone all of the way to now where I'm talking to 70 and 80-year olds who have done what mom and dad told them and their mother and father told them, which was put money in a pension, put money into a 401k, and you'll be able to live. And oh, by the way, we have this little thing called Social Security that, well, that's going to be here for the rest of our lives, so we'll have guaranteed income then. And unfortunately, the issue is, just as you said, there are three things that I find impact a family's ability and a person's ability to build wealth and to leave that legacy. And so, if we can, I'd like to kind of talk and address each one of these, at least in summary. The first one is, what if I die too soon? The reality is that 70% of our nation's households, 70% require two incomes. And so, therefore, if someone were to die too soon, there is a huge hole in not just the loss of the life, not just that whole emotional and personal loss. But let's assume we carve that out for a second and just look logically at what happens to that family. There is no way that they can continue to live the same way that they live. What you will have now, especially when the expenses, the cost, and all of those things they've already got it financed to the hilt. They needed those two incomes. You get rid of one. Now we're talking drastic measures. We're talking about survival mode. We probably can't stay in the house that we were staying in. We probably can't do a lot of the things that we were able to do when dad or mom were both working, right? And so all of a sudden, it impacts your ability to have the legacy that you would have had should there have been two incomes. David, the thing that I hear a lot when I ask people, and I ask them this question, which is, what is your greatest financial asset? I mean, I'm going to ask you, what do you think your greatest financial asset is?
Well, it's this moneymaker right here, right? It's just my ability to help others. Frankly, that's the way I see it. That's how I
Yeah.
earn my living. And I would assume that for most people, it is just that, right? It's their whatever they choose to do as a way to earn their income.
Yeah. Well, you actually hit it right on the head there. Most people, believe it or not, will throw out something like my home, or something like that. But if they don't have a house, maybe they'll say my car, or whatever the case may be. But the reality is, all of those, or most of those, are depreciating assets, or assets that have they're not free and clear. They're tied up. There's all these other things. Your ability to make an income is your biggest financial asset. And the first thing that I would tell anyone, your audience here, is, do not ever leave that unprotected. Do not ever leave that unprotected. So what does that mean? Well, that means that everyone that we work with that works on these, there's three things. What if I die too soon? What if I get sick? What if I live too long? Right? Because there are three very distinct, separate things that can kill your ability for a legacy. Well, if I die too soon, you have to make sure the right things are in place to be able to continue that legacy. And that's why I'm in life insurance. That is why I have found life insurance is the best way to build a legacy, because you're able to address all three of those questions.
And I'm going to just offer a quick personal story because I've had two of my uncles pass in their 40s. And fortunately for my aunts, they both had life insurance in place that allowed them to stay in their houses, allowed them both to continue their lifestyle and retire. It was remarkable what they were able to do with that life insurance policy that, again, when I was younger and this happened, I just it was so devastating to our family to lose two uncles at that young age. And I was so concerned for both of my aunts, but to this day, they're still in those homes. They're in their retirement years, and life insurance did that for them. So I saw it firsthand what happens when life is taken away from someone too early. So again, thanks for bringing that home to everyone. But I learned that lesson just through watching others and seeing the value of what life insurance paid to their lives.
Yeah. I've got a different story, David, that I don't mind sharing that um, isn't quite as the outcome that you had. I lost my mother when she was 59, and my mother did not have life insurance. And I was going through a time, actually, it was so she passed away in 2009. If you remember, what was going on a year before that was a huge economic downturn. My father and I had a business together. We were going through the process of liquidating all of that. We did not have an income. My mother had stage 5 ovarian cancer, and the doctor gave her 6 months to live, and she lasted almost 5 years. But the bottom line is, right at that time, I had used everything I could. I did not have anything because of where the economy was. It was one of those things, right, with the perfect storm. My father, the same way. We both had to sell off the assets of the business just to pay the creditors. And then we had my mother passing away. David, it took a year and a half before we could even raise enough to put the headstone there at that cemetery. And that is one of the reasons why I've lived through both the pros and cons of life insurance and making sure that legacy is protected. So you're exactly right. And those who have ever had someone pass away and have been the beneficiary of a policy never have complained about, boy, I wish they didn't do that.
Yeah, and I've had similar circumstance with my aunt who was sick. Again, had cancer and needed treatment for years. Same type of scenario, except she was in remission and beat it. But there were 6 to 8 years that she was fighting it, that she was unable to work, and that family again struggled. Our family rallied around them to help them, but it was a huge burden for them to have her unable to work. So, can you speak to that a little bit more on how, how does that work? How would life insurance help someone like that?
Yeah, no, that's great, because that's kind of now talking about what if I get sick along the way, right? Because unfortunately, we see this all of the time. It would be convenient, I think, is the right word, if you were going to expire and were to do that suddenly. Because let's be honest, that's the cheapest way to go. However, what happens if I get sick along the way? What happens, and these are going to be staggering to you, perhaps, David, maybe you know this, but by the time an American is 65 years old, 70% will have been diagnosed with a critical or terminal illness. 70%. So we are not all fortunate to say, okay, we're retiring today. Now, we've been diagnosed with the illness after that. It doesn't work that way. Many are diagnosed in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And one of the things that happens is you do not have anything to protect that income, your greatest financial asset. David, I've seen people who have spent 2 and 3 times more money on their auto insurance and insuring their jewelry and other things, but not their greatest financial asset, which is their ability to make wealth. So how it basically works is, with life insurance, if you get, and by the way, we're not talking about death insurance right now, okay? Because used to be the old, like your father's life insurance was, you would have to die before you would get it. I mean, it's death insurance. Right? It's not keeping you alive.
Right.
What we have today is true life insurance, because the policies that we offer, that's one of the things we do, is protect your ability to make an income. I can't keep you from getting a terminal disease, But what we can do is when you get a terminal disease, you are able to use up to 90% of that death benefit to pay for and subsidize any lost income, medical bills, and all of everything that encompasses that. So right now, when someone, what if I get sick along the way? Believe it or not, it is pennies on the dollar to set that up the right way and do it the right way. So much
And
more I
it's so
could go into, but
critical.
that's the surface.
It's so critical, Scott. I just read an article yesterday about the numbers from last year. Americans borrowed $74 billion to pay for medical bills in
Mm.
2024 alone. So that's leveraging your house, probably rating your retirement, selling off other assets. And it, like you said, that's all part of the planning that we can help them avoid, again, for pennies on the dollar, frankly.
Mm.
And the
Yep.
last one, I'll mention is, you know, the good news is you're going to live a long life. Many of us, we get that lucky gene pool. We treat ourselves well. We're not put in a lot of risky situations, and we get to see our grandkids have kids and experience being a great grandparent. But unfortunately, those situations can turn bad when, again, you run out of funding because you only planned for, let's say, a 25-year retirement. And now all of a sudden you're in your 90s, let's say, and you're having to be a burden to someone that you didn't want to be. How can life insurance help those people?
I find it as such a great question. And don't you find it odd that people on both sides of the spectrum, you can die too soon and it impacts their legacy. You can live too long and it will impact your legacy. And so that is the thing. Is like, so basically what we're saying is if you want to be able to build and keep a legacy, you have to, the best offense is a good defense. Right. And so that is the good news is this is the easy part now. This is what has been taking, frankly, the industry and just investing in retirement conversations over the last year to two, been taking it by storm. Being able to, and like, remember, I told you the three enemies of wealth. What are they? Taxes, risk, and liquidity. So let's take a look at, for example, a 401k. Let's take a look at some kind of retirement account. Now, look, you might work for a nonprofit or for a school or for something like that. So you might have it in the form of a 403b or a 457 or 401a or whatever the case is. But the reality is these concepts were put in place they're only working right now. We're starting to see this. Both Time and Forbes have come out in the last 2 years with articles that are saying the 401k and retire, it's time to retire the current retirement plans that we have. Because what we're finding is people are running out of money way too quickly. Well, the first thing is it starts with how much are you putting in at the very beginning? And most people do not get serious about retirement. I mean, think about it, David. When did you really first start getting serious about retirement? For most of us, it's when we get to the what could potentially be the halfway point, 40, maybe late 30s, maybe early 40s, whatever it is. And a lot of times we've lost a family member, we've lost someone, and we kind of have firsthand experience and say, oh, geez, I should probably plan something. And so I can't tell you how many people that I talk to that haven't really got serious about it until 40, 50, sometimes even 60 before they've even done anything. Well, here's the problem. How do you, because we know Social Security isn't the answer, right? I don't even know if I want to recommend to any of your audience here to visit the Congressional Budget Office website and take a look at what they're saying that they need to raise taxes to by 2035 if we want to keep Social Security funded. It is not good and it's not pretty. So besides the Social Security that is dwindling, the inflation rates that are going up, now we have people who can't afford to live. And I know that my heart breaks when I see that little old lady bagging groceries at the grocery store. because she wasn't able
All
to
too
claim
common,
appropriately.
Scott. Yeah, go to a store. You'll see the greeters at Walmart.
Exactly.
It's heartbreaking, like you said.
Exactly. And so there are several things that we can do about that. First of all, and the beautiful part is, like I said before, it's all about using life insurance, the new kind of life insurance that is not your father's life insurance. It is things that give you living benefits, but not only that, it is a strategy that people are now realizing we can use so we can not have to pay income tax when we try to use money that we have gained with that investment, not having to worry about risk. In 2008, when I told you about my father and I, we lost just about everything. I lost my house during that time. I lost a lot of things. Guess how many people lost money with life insurance that same year, David? Zero. There was no negative impact to their net worth based on the assets they had built within life insurance. And that is huge. When you talk about every 3.5 years, there is a correction, enough of a correction that it takes a few months to a year to correct. That it just do the simple math versus never go down, only go up. Those principles are huge. In fact, if you look at the last 25 years, it has beaten almost 50% increase my way versus how historical stocks and the market is done. So it's very, very important. We need to make sure that there's enough, there's not too much life left at the end of the money, but the other way around, because a legacy is not a legacy if there's zero in the account. All you have now is memories of who you were by your children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, that kind of thing, but there's nothing for them. And it is so important for us to make sure, and this is why I try to take this to the masses as best as I can. Education. There is a better way. It exists. And we've heard this, David, where the 1% of Americans, the 1% in the world, seem to be still gaining more ground than the rest of the 99%. And this is what I thought was quite interesting when I started thinking about this. The 1% aren't causing me to not make any less money. They're not coming into your account and stealing your money. So instead of complaining, I wonder what would happen if we started looking and saying, how are they doing it? What are they doing? And David, that's what I'm finding right now, is that people they're done getting mad. They want to learn. What can I do? Because I can tell you this, you can make $40,000 a year, work with me, and still become a millionaire by the time you're 65.
That's why I'm keep talking to people about this strategy that you've already shared with me and my agents, and I can't wait to explore this more in upcoming video series.
Yeah.
Today I think we've answered some of the broad questions, and it sounds like you found a better way than the traditional methods to save for retirement, and that there is this new life insurance policy capability that maybe wasn't around for our parents, and their parents. And so I want to thank you for today, and look forward to talking to you next time as we dive into these topics one by one.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to it again.
Okay, we'll see you then. Thanks.
You got it.
I want to thank you for listening and invite you to get involved. Subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. If you or someone you know would like help developing your legacy plan and have your story captured by this podcast, email us at legacycurious@gmail.com. Join us next time as we talk to Scott about how the new generation of life insurance products work, who they're for, and how it can be used to protect and share your legacy. I'm your host, David Gravelle. Everyone has a story, Let's make sure yours is heard and remembered.